Were you guys able to hear the sound there? I'm going to play it again. Just let me know if the sound is coming through. Okay, let's try this again. I really don't know why StreamYard have changed their share screen, and as a result, sometimes the sound works, sometimes it doesn't. So let's see if I can get it to work. Let's try this again. Let me know again if there's sound. It's important that there is sound. Okay, let me know if there is sound. Still no sound. What am I going to do? Let's try this. Third time lucky. Okay. So this scene that you see next to me is in all. I think I recorded it the very first day that I was there. And so it was kind of around the corner from where I was staying. I had no idea where to go, so I just thought it was like, okay, I'm going to walk down here. And I ended up by the Langlois Bridge, the area where he painted that bridge. You can actually see that at the end of this clip. And this river's been renamed Pont Van Gogh, or Van Gogh, as they would say in France. And so I want you to look at the colors, but also get a feel for what you're seeing. So try and what's the word? Try to channel Van Gogh. Don't see this through your eyes. Try to see it through his mind. Okay, let's try it again. So there, a couple of ways to look at what I've just shown you, and I am going to show you some other videos, but one way to look at it is through color, right? Another way to look at it is through movement, right? Those are two separate things. Another way to look at it is through just sunlight. And to me, what is so beautiful in this is the sun on the water and kind of going through the trees. So let's look at this clip just through the lens of sunlight and sunshine. Look to the left, the sun and the water on the left. And I purposefully was trying to find a spot to record that scene where I could see the sun on the water and then the bridge as well. So in other words, if I'd gone on the other side of the bridge, I wouldn't have been able to capture the sun because I would have been at the wrong angle, right? But think of the sun as sunshine on leaves, not just leaves. Sunshine on water, not just water. Sunshine, that you are trying to show a picture of sunshine, not really necessarily a picture of anything else. Okay, let's watch it again. So what I quite like about this video is normally when you have a phone and you record sound, it comes across in this sort of muffled kind of thing, And for some reason, when I recorded it over there, maybe because the trees were sheltering me, you can actually hear the wind through the trees the way that you hear it when you're standing there. And so that was definitely a bit of a bonus. By the way, a big happy birthday to Terry. It's the 22nd of March, and it's Terry's birthday. Happy birthday, Terry. It was actually my brother's birthday 3 days ago. And yeah, he's been celebrating in Cape Town. So yeah, so happy birthday, Terry. What is your star sign? I know my brother's a Pisces, so what are you? What comes after Pisces? So now I'm going to play you guys a different clip. And this one is from, probably not going to play, but let's hopefully it does. Aries, okay. So this is obviously a scene at night in the town square of Arles. You get a very good idea of what Arles actually looks and feels like. Very old buildings. Some of them, some buildings date back to the Roman era or structures or whatever. And it has a distinct atmosphere at night. At night, when I was there, certainly at this time when I recorded it was quite cold actually. It was around about mid-May 2019. And yeah, definitely pretty cold. So you can also get a sense of, I think the loneliness Van Gogh must have felt, a Dutch artist in the south of France. He's alone there, he doesn't have Paul Gogh hasn't joined him yet. And he is, trying to find his way through life and trying to find his corner of the universe. And so he finds himself in, and it really is a beautiful little town. It's very scenic outside the town, very scenic inside the town. There's a big amphitheater as well. And so, it's really definitely a town with atmosphere. So I'm going to play this again. And now I want you to just think of it through the eyes of an artist who isn't French, who is new to the area, who wants to make friends, who feels a little bit like he's from the outside looking in. Okay. So I've got two more videos to show you, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Monet before we jump into the Van Gogh letters. You may remember this one. Those are my shoes in the foreground. Okay, and then I've got one or two more, I think. I think there's another one that I can share. Where is it? It's quite strange. I don't see it here. Quite sure why. Okay, well, let's play this one. I think some of you have seen this one. Shall I play it one more time? Okay, I thought I had another video, but I seems to have gotten lost between sending it from the one computer to the other. Anyway, so what I also want to show you is this. Anyway, so what I also, not my night. Okay, so this is an article from CNN. Scientists confirm a theory, a long-held theory about what inspired Monet. And have you guys voted in the poll? The poll is, what do you think inspired Claude Monet? It was a contemporary. And I see 37% say flowers and 63% say ponds. What would you say if I said it's actually neither? What would you say about that? And kind of the reason why I'm asking the question is because we kind of want to ask the same question about Van Gogh. What inspired him? I've played you a couple of clips, and so it's kind of the same question. What do you think inspired Van Gogh when he went to Arles? So I just want to go through this article quickly. There's a Claude Monet. Oh, there's a hint. What do you think inspired Claude Monet? Just looking at this image, this painting. Any ideas? Okay, so let me go through parts of this article. In a letter to his wife in March 1901, bear in mind Van Gogh died 11 years earlier, pioneering French painter Claude Monet lamented the bad weather that prevented him from working, as well as another conspicuous impediment to his creativity. He says, everything is as good as dead. No train, no smoke, no boat, nothing to excite the inspiration a little. Does that give you a clue what kind of inspired him? That's the answer. Smoke. Smoke inspired him. And think about Impressionism. It's soft. It's kind of opaque. And if you look at this painting, you see that haziness, that smokiness, right? And so let's go a little bit further. They talk about, he says, I work on air pollution, and while seeing Turner, Whistler, and Monet paintings at Tate in London, I noticed stylistic transformations in their work. The contours of their paintings become hazier. The palette appeared wider, and the style changed from more figurative to more impressionistic. Those changes accord with physical expectations of how air pollution influences light. The team looked at over 100 paintings by Monet and Joseph Turner, who was active before Monet, and they were trying to figure out what was going on, whether their paintings were capturing increasingly polluted skies during the Industrial Revolution. And it says that the focus was on these two artists because they prolifically painted landscapes and cityscapes, often with repeated motifs. And so here it says, in general, air pollution makes objects appear hazier. And so if you look at these paintings here, they look quite pretty. You know, it looks like a Monet, right? But are you looking at it through a lens of, oh, that's a Monet, that's really nice? Or are you looking at it to some extent through a lens of reality, the same reality that the artist is looking at it? And so can you see that, let's see if we can blow this image up. Can you see that what he's actually painting there is, in a way, air pollution? And he's seeing air pollution in a positive way. He's saying, wow, it actually looks quite pretty. It looks quite soft, right? And so in a way, it's not really the case that the artist is such a brilliant creative mind. He's simply painting what's right in front of him. And his only interpretation is to say, you know what, this smoke doesn't actually bother me. It actually looks pretty cool in this light, right? You see what I'm saying? He's simply saying, wow, I actually like the way the light appears when it's smoky, and so I'm going to paint that. Whereas to a lot of other people, they don't like the smell of the smoke, they don't like the feel of the smoke, they don't like the look of the smoke. But for an artist, maybe he might like that. And I know that as a photographer, sometimes when there's been a volcanic eruption elsewhere in the world, sometimes when there's been fires or very cold weather, or whatever it is, and those mists and so on definitely create a far more atmospheric landscape, right? And so just from that perspective, it's quite nice to have something going on rather than just blue skies and the sun shining, right? So it's quite interesting, right? And then have a look at that picture. This is from Turner, and this is a picture titled Rain, Steam, and Speed. And you can see it's very hazy. Shall I bring it up a bit bigger? And so you might be looking at that and thinking, wow, what's going on in the artist's mind? Actually, it was just a dirtier world, a smokier world, a smokier environment. So I just want to read the concluding remarks here. So what the person says is, what I think is really wonderful about these works is that Monet Monet creates beautiful atmospheric effects from something as ugly and dirty as smoke and soot. He and Turner, they don't turn away from the pollution, but they were able to transform these negative environmental changes into a source of creative inspiration, right? And that's the key takeout. They were able to transform negative environmental changes into a source of creative inspiration. And in a way, that's what this channel is about, being inspired, being creative, despite the fact that we might be in negative, some kind of negative climate, or something that is not necessarily positive. How can something that is a burden to everybody else actually be a source of creative inspiration to you, right? So that is actually the right answer to the poll. What inspired Claude Monet? And the answer is smoke. And so it's understandable that very few of you got the answer. But I think what's also important to bear in mind is that we think we know everything. We think that we've got the internet and we know everything about everything. And we often don't. Often life is full of surprises. And so in the same way that smoke inspired Monet, I kind of want to ask you guys, what do you think inspired Van Gogh? And I really hope I'm going to be able to show you some of the additional content that I thought I had with me. Let me just see if I can bring up some of the images. So what I'm going to show you now are images, not video. And these are some images that I photographed through Arles and a little bit outside of Arles. So that is that was the closest structure I could find to the Yellow House. And what I mean is, the Yellow House doesn't exist anymore. The building where Van Gogh lived was destroyed. A bomb fell on it in the Second World War, so it doesn't exist. And so you were looking for something as a sort of proxy for that. And this was the closest thing that I could find. It looked yellow from the outside. The building itself looked old. The shutters looked old. And this sort of looked and felt to me like the Yellow House if it really existed. So that was the point of this image. This is on the banks of the Rhone, and it's also very close to the Yellow House, probably a stone's throw, probably 1 or 2 minutes walk from the Yellow House. You could see the scene from there. And the reason that this sort of bench is here, well, let me see if I can get that painting and see what I'm talking about. Is it on this? So this is kind of the picture I've got in mind. Or this is where Van Gogh painted this particular painting. But there's another one. Yeah, I can't quite find it right now. There's a sketch of it, but there's another one where he clearly illustrates this bench, and I can't quite find it right now, but we'll get to it eventually. We're not quite there yet. He hasn't quite come to the Yellow. He hasn't quite purchased or to rent the Yellow House at this point anyway. So this is around the corner from the Yellow House, and there is a bridge. It's a train bridge, and so this is the kind of atmosphere minus these cars that he would experience every day. The train rumbling in, the train rumbling out. Obviously, it would be a steam train, and this is illustrated pretty well in Loving Vincent. So that is literally the Yellow House would have been situated over here, just around the corner. And the River Rhone is even further away this way. It's kind of on the other side of these buildings, and then there's this train track and train bridge going over here. We've seen that. We've seen that. So this is the side to Van Gogh that you may not see that often. The scores of, especially Asian tourists, that for some reason, I'm not quite sure why, Asians are totally into Van Gogh. They think he's phenomenal. And so while I was enjoying this quiet space and enjoying the wind, next moment a bus sort of rumbled up, stopped, and I don't know, 20, 30 tourists sort of got out. And suddenly it was a totally different atmosphere. One minute you were channeling Van Gogh, you were alone with nature, you could hear the birds singing. The next thing, people everywhere, chattering, and I must say I was quite kind of bemused by the way they took in the scene. They sort of got offloaded right in front of this plaque. Can you see that plaque over there? And they basically just what's the word, idled around this plaque, took a couple of photos, and then got back on the bus and went somewhere else. It was literally like that. Stop, get off at the plaque, take a photo. You can see this guy's doing that. And then sort of stand around for a few minutes and then get back on the bus and then go into the next one. And I mean, that is the definition of how to not channel Van Gogh. I mean, you are, I don't know, you're basically just taking photos maybe to tell someone that you were there. I don't know. Nothing more than that. So it's a very empty experience. You guys have seen that picture and that one. Have you seen this one? I think you have. What I really like about this is the way the sun kind of kisses the grass. It's very golden and very, I don't know, it's just full of life, isn't it? And that's the kind of scene that those tourists just simply wouldn't see, because they were standing kind of on a tar road the whole time, and they were looking into each other's faces the whole time. And so that's a little bit down the track. You can see that's a different bridge. So what this is well, let's first ask you guys, any ideas what we're looking at? Any idea what this is? Do you remember Van Gogh mentioned a ancient abbey? I can't remember his exact words, ancient abbey or a ruined church or something. Well, this is the inside of that church. And so these are some photos I took. It's a Roman abbey. And so that's what it looks like on the inside. Let me do this. So obviously it's got enormous pillars inside and just architecture that we're not very used to. And there's a window on the inside. And there's another one. And that is just outside this abbey. And so what you're looking at there is a unusual Van Gogh. It's an unusual painting by him. He's in the Allée Champs, and this is like a avenue of trees. I think these are actually Asian tourists as well over here. And so there's a cemetery in this area. And then, but what makes this quite exceptional is that he painted this at the same time that Paul Gogh was in Arles and Paul was also painting the same scene. And then, so what is interesting is how they were both essentially in the same place, same time, painting the same thing, and how what they painted looked completely different. And we're going to get to that. That's closer to the end of the year. That's a little bit further into Arles. It's kind of the botanical gardens. Unfortunately, the light is so bright you can't quite see that, but this is the spot where Van Gogh painted this scene. I think one of the reasons why it's such a bad photo was I was actually taking a photo through a wrought iron gate that was locked, so I couldn't actually go and stand right here. So this park is unfortunately closed. But again, just look at the sunshine. This is spring sunshine on the leaves and everything. And for an artist like Van Gogh, who is from the Netherlands, where it maybe felt like you inside a sunless bathroom. You know, it's waterlogged, it's gray, it's dull, it's rainy, it's wet all the time. This must have been very bright and refreshing, right? So this image is outside of Arles. It's not Saint-Remy. It's about a quarter of the way to Saint-Remy. It's in that direction. It's the used to be a monastery. Can't quite remember. It starts with an M. Monastery. The Abbey of Montmayor. That's the proper name, but it is a monastery. Yeah, Montmayor Abbey. Let's see if I can. Here's an image of it from Wikipedia. So do you recognize, if you look at this over here, do you recognize that in this image? Right, so it's the same thing. This is from Wikipedia. And there's just some other perspectives. Rock tombs. That's the inside of it. Okay. Right, and then there's that's one of my photos. That's another perspective. Kind of feels like a castle. And I quite like that photo. What do you guys think? I just like the way that it frames the landscape beyond it. The only thing missing is some fluffy clouds, and maybe if it was a little bit late in the day and it was a bit more of a golden appearance. But look at the beautiful colors on the stone. That's something we don't often see in South Africa, where everything is quite new. You know, nothing's more than 200 or 300 years old. Most things are 20 or 30 years old. You know, these things are hundreds of years old. And so the other thing to notice is not only how green, you have these sort of squares in terms of the farm fields, but it's quite a flat landscape here, and you might imagine that it's flat everywhere, but it's certainly not flat everywhere. In fact, this is actually a slight ridge. And if we go a bit further, I was trying to capture the edge of this abbey and then the view from there, and there's the moon as well. That's why I did it at that angle. But if you look over here in the distance, can you see that's pretty mountainous? Those are fairly high mountains. That is in the direction of Saint-Remy. So unfortunately, not a great photo, but as I was trying to get that and that in the picture, and then also this. So did I succeed? I don't know. And then this is I actually took video of this as well. I can't find it at the moment. But what was interesting here was when you this is inside the abbey. That this tree that you see here was literally going like this, and the wind was blowing pretty strongly. And what this is actually part of my mountain bike ride from Arles to Saint-Remy, and so this was a kind of a quick stop. It actually cost me dearly, because by the time I got to Saint-Remy, it was not dark, but the fact that I had to get back as well meant I had to get back before the sun went down, and I ultimately did a bit of frantic mountain biking in the dark, like on a highway. So yeah, so what is quite atmospheric with this is you in this abbey, which feels like a castle, and the trees are kind of doing this, and you're going to have to just imagine what that's like. This is somewhere else inside the abbey. This is actually a set that they used at Eternity's Gate, in a Van Gogh movie. They used this corridor in the abbey to simulate the asylum of Saint-Remy. So used a little bit of license there. I'm just wondering whether those windows that I showed you earlier aren't also from this abbey. I think there's only just one image from the Roman building, and then the rest are from this abbey. And then that's one of the pictures that he painted while he was in Arles, and you can see that he's now starting to find his feet color-wise. Do you see that? He's not only finding his feet color-wise, but he's already adopted that those energy lines that Van Gogh's art is so well known for. I think is there any more? That's a photo of me at the Kröller Museum in the Netherlands, and the picture next to me, I actually had very little sleep, so I look a little. If I look sleepy, it's because I didn't sleep very well the night before. And this is the original paintings. I'm standing right next to a real Van Gogh, artwork, and that is from Arles. That's the night cafe. And then this is contemporaneous to when he was at Saint-Remy. So you can see how his art is developed between this picture, which is kind of soft and pretty and sweet, and this one, which is far more moody and hardcore. Do you guys see that? And you can also tell that the artist is becoming who he's meant to be at this stage, whereas over here, he's still figuring out what he's trying to say and how he wants to say it. Oh, that's nice to hear. Thanks, Sharon. So we are going to continue now with the Van Gogh letters. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you the video I played at the beginning, and then I'm going to ask you something about that. What do you think actually inspired Van Gogh, right? And given what we know about Monet. But before we do, the two things I want to do. The one is I want to put a link to a GoFundMe, and this is for Nisi's sister, and she's provided, it's quite sad to read, but she's provided a narrative on this GoFundMe. You guys are friends of Nisi. She used to be in chat quite a lot, and so I want you to please copy that link and maybe keep it somewhere. If you like, I can put it as a comment at the end of this as well. but it's a little bit of sad news. I wouldn't say it's little, it's very sad. Um, just thinking, have I got the right one here? Why does it look so different? Oh, here it is. Okay. So let me just put this on screen. So this is a GoFundMe. It's on behalf of uh, Nisi's sister, Darlene, and she says the following. I'm the younger sister to Susie. Is that a second name? Anyway, she has been my best friend and hero my entire life. I would do anything for her, just as everyone reading this. We have all been through many wonderful times in our lives. On the 9th of January 2023, she heard those three letters no one would ever dream or imagine hearing: ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And then she provides the rest of um, the details around that. She says that ALS treatment is very expensive. It's costing patients an estimated $300,000 a year. And so she's started this GoFundMe with a goal of $30,000, already made almost a third of that, 72 donations so far. So, yeah, because she's one of our part of our community, I just wanted to reach out to you guys and let you guys know about this. Any donation, I think, will be very welcome. It's very difficult dealing with a I think it's a degenerative sickness like this that uh, is expensive, and you've got to consistently battle. So you know, I hope you're going to at least look at this at some point. Take your time, read through what she says here, and then see how you are moved. So either way, our thoughts are with Nisi and her family, and you know, we hope that you know, it's really not something that we like to think about. You know, terminal type illness. It's not something we like to think about, but it is part of the world, and so I hope you guys can maybe perk them up that have got to deal with it, and maybe make some kind of contribution. Josie says, I'll donate what I can. Thanks, guys. So, you know, we do want to look out for one another. And so this is something that Stephanie told me about. And I thought that probably one of the best places to start letting you guys know about this is on this channel. So, um, so yeah, please have a look at that. Again, if you need me to send you the link, I can do that. What I'm going to do now, my voice is sort of going, so I'm going to go and get a fresh glass of water, and then I'll be back with, we're going to start after that little intermission with the Van Gogh, with the Van Gogh letters. Let's, okay, off I go. Okay, so Nisi, our hearts are with you, and I hope that I hope that you I hope that you're going to get a little bit of support from our members, not only financially but just hearts and minds. We do want to look out for one another. Okay, let's get going with the Van Gogh letters. We start from the 18th of March, and bear in mind it's the 22nd of March, so it's around about this time of the year. My dear Bernard, having promised to write, I want to begin by telling you that the country struck me as being as beautiful as Japan for the limpidity of the atmosphere. Can you see what he starts off here is he highlights the atmosphere, that he's touched by the vibe that he's feeling. He's touched by the like by an impression more than by something specific, right? It gets a certain buzz from the landscape. And then he also says gay color effects. He says the water makes patches of a beautiful emerald and rich blue in the landscapes. Can you see there's also right from the word go talking about the water? And that video that I showed you is one of the first things I saw when I was there. And he talks about the pale orange setting sun making the land appear blue, splendid yellow suns. Meanwhile, I haven't seen the country in its normal summer splendor. The costumes of the women are pretty, and especially on Sunday, one sees on the boulevard very naive and well-found color arrangements. And obviously, this is like early spring. He says, without doubt, it'll become even brighter in summer. I regret that life here is not as cheap as I had hoped it would be, and up to now, I have not found better bargains than you would find in Ponthafen. I started out by paying 5 francs, and now I'm down to 4 francs a day. It would be necessary to know the locals here and to know how to eat. Don't ask me what that is. Garlic pate. Bria would probably be able to pronounce that. And he writes, if there were several of us, I'm given to believe conditions would be more advantageous. So he's already thinking about company, right? He says there would be perhaps a real advantage as well for artists who love the sun and color that exist in the Midi. If the Japanese are not working in their country, it is certain that the art continues in France. Now, again, it's quite ironic that he's talking about the Japanese and we've been talking about sort of Asian tourists. It's quite an interesting allegory. At the top of this letter, I'm sending you a small sketch of a study that I'm trying to make something of. Sailors with their sweethearts going up to the town, which is profiled by the strange silhouette of its drawbridge on a huge yellow sun. I have another study. So can you see that is something that he's seeing, right? That's something he sees in front of him. Sailors with their sweethearts going up to the town. How do you think it feels for him to see that? He sees these young dudes and young women kind of going hand in hand up to the town to dance, to do whatever. And he's this sort of singleton. You know, how do you think that feels? What do you think he's feeling and thinking? He says, I will be happy with a word from you to know what you are doing and where you are going. And so how does Van Gogh kind of socialize? How does Van Gogh connect with other people? Well, he writes letters. And so this is a letter not to his brother, but to Bernard, right? It's actually a mutual friend of Vincent's and Paul Gauguin's. And so this is what he's painting at the time. At this moment, he's noticing people that are in love or lovers, right? That's what he's seeing. And again, one's got to remember that how this story ends in terms of this year Right now it's the middle of March. He's got his ears, both ears, and by the end of the year he will have lost one ear. So how does it go from this to that? And so that's one of the things we want to try and figure out over the course of the next couple of episodes. That's something I want you to keep in the back of your minds. You know, you've come from the true crime space into this space, but this is a kind of a, what is the motive here? Who did it and why did they do it? That's something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Okay, let's go into the next letter. 18th of March, and it's from Vincent to Theo. My dear Theo, here's a short note for Bernard and for Lautrec, to whom I expressly promised to write. So he's actually sending 3 letters in one to Theo and then 2 others. I send them to you so you can hand them over when you have a chance, but there's absolutely no hurry whatever. And it will be an excuse for you to see what they are doing and hear what they have to say if you want to. What is Tearstick doing? Nothing. If you have had no reply, if I were you, I should write him a very short and very cool note. So they've been trying to recruit Tearstick into giving their little studio project credibility. And so you know, what is he going to do? Deborah says Vincent was inspired by Monet's colors. Yeah, he is feeling a bit displaced, and he is feeling feelings of longing. Okay, so he says, I do not think that we should press him in a fresh letter explaining the business all over again. One must be careful when dealing with him, but what must be avoided is letting oneself be treated as if one were dead or outlawed, that's all. Let's hope that meanwhile you have an answer from him. I had a note from Gogh, who explains about the bad weather, is still ailing, and talks about the various miseries that afflict humanity, talks about lack of money, and he feels doomed to perpetual poverty. Wind and rain these last few days. I've worked at home on the study, which I made a sketch of in Bernard's letter. I wanted to manage to get colors into it, like stained glass windows. And I showed you guys some stained glass windows a few moments ago. And it says, in a good firm drawing. I'm in the middle of Pierre et Jean. I think that's Pierre and Jean by Guy de Maupassant. Let's just see what that's actually about. See if we can figure that out reasonably quickly. Oh, so it's a naturalist or psycho-realist work by Guy de Maupassant, and it was written in his native Normandy between June and September 1887. So this book was written less than a year before Vincent actually read it or released. And the plot is as follows. Let's quickly put that on screen. Oh, I'm going to take myself out. Okay. Let's just quickly go through the plot of... This is the kind of thing that Vincent's amusing himself with. Pierre and Jean are the sons of Jerome Roland, a jeweler who's retired to Le Havre. I think that's in the Netherlands. Oh, that's not. It's actually also in Normandy. And his wife, Louise. Pierre works as a doctor and Jean is a lawyer. It recounts the story of a middle-class French family whose lives are changed when Leon Marechal, a deceased family friend, leaves his inheritance to Jean. So yeah, you've got Vincent, who's, I won't say he's destitute, but he's, you know, doesn't have a lot of money, and he's reading a book about 2 brothers who inherit something from someone else. That's kind of what he's thinking about. This provokes Pierre to doubt the fidelity of his mother and the legitimacy of his brother. Quite interesting. Pierre discovers that his theories about his brother's illegitimacy are correct. So it's a little bit like a bit of a romantic, not a romantic, a family mystery. When he discovers his mother has hid and lied about an incriminating portrait of Maréchal and his love letters to her, some of which she burns when she realizes Pierre is learning about her past infidelity. This investigation sparks violent reactions in Pierre, whose external appearance vis-a-vis his mother visibly changes. In his anguish, most notably shown during family meals, he tortures her with allusions to the past that he has now uncovered. Meanwhile, Jean's career and love life improve over the course of the novel, while Pierre's life gets significantly worse. Provoked by his brother's accusation of jealousy, Pierre reveals to Jean what he has learned. But unlike Pierre, Jean offers his mother love and protection. The novel closes with Pierre's departure on an ocean liner. Thus, the novel is organized around the unwelcome appearance of a truth, Jean's illegitimacy, its suppression for the sake of family continuity, and the acquisition of wealth and the expulsion from the family of the legitimate son. Quite interesting. So the legitimate son, finding out all of this stuff, ends up being expelled from the whole equation. Definitely quite ironic. Okay, let's go back to the letter. So that's what he's been reading. He says, it's good. Have you read the preface where he explains the artist's liberty to exaggerate? Now, can you see how Van Gogh is actually being inspired also by authors, also by writing? And he's thinking about the idea of not necessarily just exaggerating in writing, but exaggerating in painting. And isn't that what you see in this image? Isn't that exaggerating? Isn't that what he's trying to ultimately achieve? Something intense, an intensity of artistic expression. Does that make sense? To create in his novel a world more beautiful, more simple, more consoling than ours. And there you have really a description of Van Gogh's art. To create in his art a world more beautiful, more simple, and more consoling than ours. That is the definition, what's the word? That is a description of Van Gogh's art that is different to many other artists, arguably any other artist. It's simplified. It's also a world that is more beautiful, but there's also meant to be something consoling in what is showing you. And then how do you do that? How do you console someone with a brushstroke? Anyway, he goes on to explain what Flaubert may have meant when he said, talent is long patience and originality, an effort of will and of intense observation. Right? That stands out to him. I need to be patient. I need my originality to burn over a long period, like a long, slow burn. And I need to impose my will through this effort of intense observation. And isn't that also what this is trying to say? Intense observation. I see the life inside the tree. I see the electricity inside the landscape. I see the power inside the sun, kind of thing, and the sunshine. There's a Gothic portico here, which I'm beginning to think admirable, the Porch of St. Trophime. But it is so cruel, so monstrous, like a Chinese nightmare, that even this beautiful monument of so grand a scale seems to me another world, and I'm so glad not to belong to it as to that glorious world of the Roman Nero. What do you think he's referring to here? A beautiful monument. I'm not quite sure if he's referring to the abbey or if he's referring to the Roman ruins. I've got an idea it's actually to the abbey, because you're talking about a grand style, and there's something monstrous about it. Then he says, must I tell the truth and add that the zouaves, the brothels, the adorable little Arlesians going to their first communion, the priest in his surplice, who looks like a dangerous rhinoceros, the absinthe drinkers, all seem to me to be beings of another world. Can you see how he feels like a stranger in a strange land? And you can also tell what he's been doing. He has been going to brothels. He's been observing adorable little Arlesians, and I think I suppose that is actually that's a reference to little children, I guess. It's quite weird. It talks about brothels in one breath and adorable little Arlesians in the next, and then he says the priest looks like a dangerous rhinoceros. It's like it seems to be mixing or juxtaposing the sacred and the profane. And there's a reference to absinthe drinkers, brothels over there, priests over there, absinthe drinkers over there. He says, that doesn't mean that I'd feel at home in an artistic world, but I would rather fool myself than feel alone. That's quite an interesting statement. I'd rather fool myself than feel alone. And I think I should feel depressed if I did not fool myself about everything. Also quite a poignant statement, isn't it? You have already had heavy snow in Paris, according to our friend. It wasn't a bad idea, that journalist advising General Boulanger to wear rose-colored spectacles so as to put the secret police on the wrong scent. Who says there's not true crime in these letters? Anyway, according to him, they'd match his beard better. Might have a favorable influence on the picture trade. It's been wanted for long enough. But we really must get some idea of what our excellent Mr. Tierstig is up to. He must declare himself. In the interest of our comrades, it seems to me it's almost our business not to allow them to think of us as dead. It is not about us, but the whole question of the Impressionists is at stake. And having been challenged by us, he must give us an answer. Like myself, you will feel that we cannot proceed without being categorically informed of his intentions. If we consider it desirable to hold a permanent exhibition of the Impressionists in London and Marseille, it goes without saying that we'll try to set them up. If not, what are his intentions with regard to the offensive? Do they exist or not? The question remains, will Tierstig be in it, yes or no? And has he taken into account, as we have, the resulting depreciation of the value of pictures, now highly priced, a depreciation that will, I think, probably set in as soon as the Impressionist stock rises. You observe that the dealers in expensive pictures ruin themselves by posing for policy reasons the advent of a school which for years has shown an energy and perseverance worthy of Monet, Dubigny, and others. Well, let me know if Tierstig has written to you and what he may have said. I will do nothing in this without you. Good luck and a handshake. Ever yours, Vincent. I enclose Gogh's letter with the others so you can read all of them. So I think that this is actually a letter with 3 other letters in it. And at this point, Vincent van Gogh is 34 years old. He's got 3 years left on the clock at this point. And now we've got a letter from Paul Gogh to Vincent around about the 19th of March. My dear Vincent, thank you for having replied. I see that you are in a good place to study the sun that charms you, and you work so much better when you grasp the subject. Thank you again for your good intentions in my regard. The painting trade is so hard these days. Because of it, I'm in a perpetual trance here. Money problems are the only ones that have any effect on me. Unfortunately, I believe I'm always destined to suffer from them. It's quite a dramatic fellow, not afraid to complain. At the moment, Ponthaven is very miserable due to bad weather, winds, and continual rain, and I wait for the good weather to put me back to work, which I've abandoned a little due to illness. A cordial handshake, Paul Gogh. Right, so now we're at the 24th of March, which is 2 days ahead of where we are right now in our timeline. Let's have a look at this painting. So what he's starting to see around him is the beginning of, for example, apricot trees blossoming. It's quite nice, isn't it? Can you see he's not quite finding his voice in this painting? He's not quite getting it, getting off the starting line. So I think you can kind of ask the question, what's wrong with this picture? Why does it feel neither here nor there? What's missing? My dear Theo, I was tremendously glad to get your letter. Thank you for it and for the 50-franc note. Congratulations on Tierstig's letter. Oh, at last he's responded. I think it is absolutely satisfactory. I'm certain that there's nothing to be hurt about in his silence with regard to me. Besides, he could count on your giving me his letter to read. So there's a little bit of bad blood between Tierstig and Vincent. They've, had some harsh words directly to one another. Anyway, he says, it is much simpler for him to have only you to write to. And as far as I'm concerned, unless he thinks my stuff hopelessly bad, you'll see that he'll write me a line as soon as he has seen what I've done. I tell you again, I'm more pleased with a simple and well-meaning answer of his than I can say. You will have noticed that he says he's prepared to buy a good Monticelli for his own collection. So here is, if you don't really like orchards with blossoming apricot trees, and that's not a terribly good execution either, well then how about this? That's just peachy, isn't it? And the colors certainly are pretty orangey. That's quite a nice picture. I wouldn't mind having that in my home. I wouldn't mind having that picture on my wall. So he says, what if you were to say to him that in our collection we have a bunch of flowers, which is a better piece of painting and more beautiful than one by Diaz? That Monticelli sometimes made a bunch of flowers an excuse for gathering together in a single panel the whole range of his richest and most perfectly balanced tones, and that you must go straight to Delacroix to find anything equal to his orchestration of colors. Speaking of colors, Yvonne sent me some of her paintings that she did during lockdown. I'll try and share those with you perhaps during the next live. Terry says, thanks everyone for my birthday wishes. You sure know how to make a girl feel special. Terry says, I made it to the Redwood Grove and enjoying my free croissant from Panera. Okay. Enjoy your croissant, Terry. And please take some photos there of what is around you so that we can share in your day. Okay, so this is an incredibly yellow image, isn't it? Very, very yellow, and not a terribly good execution either. You can see he's trying to find his way. I don't know why the sky is the same color as the ground, as the river. It's very it's like very urine colored. It's the best thing I can say about it. Also that I'm speaking of picture in the Delary Barrettes, we actually know of another flower piece that I don't know what that's all about. I hope you will send him Gogh's Fine Marine, but how glad I am that Tierstik should have written like this, exclamation mark. When you are writing him, you might mention Russell. When I write Russell myself, I shall talk to him about his pictures and ask him to exchange one with me, because we shall want to mention his name. And so can you see how, although Van Gogh is in Arles, his mind is almost with the activities of other people. He's thinking about business arrangements and other people. You know what I mean? Can you see how he is in all, but he's not really there? He's sort of there, but he's thinking about what's going on in other places and with other people. Then he says, I've just finished a group of apricot trees in bloom in a little orchard of fresh green. I've had a setback with a sunset with figures and a bridge that I spoke of to Bernard. The bad weather prevented my working on the spot, and I've completely ruined it by trying to finish it at home. However, I had once began the same subject again on another canvas, but as the weather was quite different in grey tones without figures. It would not be a bad idea for you to send Tierstig one of my studies. Would you say the Bridget Clichy with the yellow sky and two houses reflected in the water? So I can't believe it. He actually wants to send that incredibly ugly picture to Tierstig, like this is the best that I've produced. He wants to send this horrible urine stained thing to Tierstig to say, this is what I can do. Please, no. Then he says, or should I send butterflies or the field of poppies for that matter? He says, if you think so too, you might tell Tierstig that I myself thought I should have a greater chance of selling in Holland with nature studies of the Midi. Thank you very much for all the steps you've taken toward the exhibition of the Independence. On the whole, I'm very glad that they've been put with the other Impressionists. But though it doesn't matter in the least this time, in the future, my name ought to be in the catalogue as I sign it on the canvas, namely Vincent and not Van Gogh. This is really quite interesting, is that he's now making certain ultimate decisions about himself as an artist, how he wants to represent himself in terms of his signature. He says, I'm going to sign my name Vincent and not Van Gogh. And he says, for the simple reason that they do not know how to pronounce the Latin name here, right? And I can tell you that in France, they pronounce his name Van Gogh, and that's not right. And his name isn't Van Gogh. It's not easy to pronounce, but it's Van Gogh. You probably need to turn the van into more of a von. So Van Gogh, that's probably how you need to say it, right? You guys want to practice it about 5 times? You want to practice saying his name? Let's try 1, 2, 3. Van Gogh. Try again. Vincent van Gogh. Gogh, 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 Gogh. Hi, my name is Vincent van Gogh. Huh? Vincent van Gogh. And so now you can see why he doesn't use his surname, because no one can pronounce it. And it sounds like someone sort of trying to blow their nose or something. So he says, I return to you. I return to you enclosed Tierstig's and Russell's letters. It might perhaps be interesting to keep the artist correspondence. It would not be a bad idea to add the little head of the Breton woman by friend Bernard to your consignment. He must be shown that all the Impressionists are good and their work very varied. I think our friend Reed regrets having fallen out with us, but unfortunately it's quite impossible to offer him the same advantages again. I must say, I find all of this quite dull. It's sort of all of this talk about making arrangements with this one and that one. I find it a little bit tedious, don't you? He says, it is not enough to be fond of pictures, and he seems to me to have no feeling for artists. If he changes as much as all that, it will not be overnight. He says, I want to congratulate you at once on the rebirth of your business relations in Holland. That's a reference to this guy, Tierstig. With a handshake, ever yours, Vincent. Paris doesn't pay. This is a postscript. I'd be sorry to see the surats in a provincial museum or in a cellar, and so on and so on. Let's go on to the next letter. Vincent, when are you going to start painting? When are you going to start getting going? So this is another execution. I don't know if it's reproduced really badly, but it's not terribly good. I don't know what you think. I would not want this in my house. Would you? I definitely wouldn't. Okay. Thank you for your letter. This is to Theo, I think the last letter in March. Oh, not. Second last letter in March. Okay. And then there's also a letter to his sister. Dear Theo, thank you for your letter. I should like to write you at leisure, but must do it in great haste. First, Tierstig as usual. I'm very glad that your consignments will go off on Monday and blah, 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 blah. And then he says, I've been working on a size 20 canvas in the open air in an orchard, lilac plough land, a reed fence, 2 pink peach trees. There you go, Team Peachtree. Against a sky of glorious blue and white. Probably the best landscape I've done. I just brought it home when I received our sister a Dutch notice in memory of Mauve. Let's just see if we can, maybe there's a better version of that that doesn't look so horrible. No, they all look pretty horrible. They all do look pretty horrible. I mean, even if you take this, what has happened now? Can you guys still see me? I've got something freezing on my screen. Okay, I'm going to have to do a quick shutdown. Sorry, guys. Oh, there it is. Not sure what that is all about. I was about to, okay, so that's a little bit better, but it's still not terribly good. I suppose it's not too bad. But certainly better than the one that you see on this website. Obviously a bad reproduction. Oh, that's actually not too bad. Anyway, he says it's probably the best landscape I've done, so that's why it was worth looking at. And then he says something about, oh, never think the dead are dead so long as there are men alive. The dead will live. The dead will live. That's how I feel. Nothing sadder than that. So bear in mind, Mauve has died. I think Mauve is some kind of relative, and that image that he painted was to give to his widow. And then he talks about some of the colors that he's using. He says, I now have 4 or 5 studies of orchids besides this one, and I'm going to begin size 30 canvas on the same subject. This zinc white that I'm using now does not dry at all. If everything were dry, I could send off a batch at once. But every day is a good day now. So just think, he paints, it dries, he packages it, he sends it to his brother, and it doesn't sell. He paints, it dries, he packages it up, sends it off to his brother, and all of that costs money. He orders paints, he, makes canvases, finds something, paints it, waits for it to dry, packages it, sends it to Paris. His brother receives it, unpacks it, and it doesn't sell. Again and again and again, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. Timmy, come up, come, jump, come. Come on. Why must I always pick you up? Come, up, come. Okay, I'm gonna not look at him. Let's see if he jumps up. Then he says, I find painting hard work because of the wind. There you have it. The wind is a factor, but I fasten my easel to pegs driven into the ground, and I work in spite of it. It is too lovely. So can you see what he's saying is, this is a very determined artist. The wind's blowing really hard, and so he almost sets up his easel like erecting a tent. He lashes the corners of it to the ground, and he battles against the wind, and he's like, the wind's blowing, and he sort of dabs paint, and he's like, trying to fight to paint, and maybe it's because the wind is doing this to the canvas that almost tricks him into realizing, wow, that's actually quite a nice effect, these rapidly produced lines. What do you think about that insight? Anyway, he says, keep in close touch with Tearstick, success or no. I'm inclined to think that it will come within a year. I think that Tearstick and not Reed ought to suggest or to start the Impressionist exhibition in England. And then more about that, and so on and so on. Yeah. And Vincent has just turned 35 years old. No reference to that even. And so this letter to Wilhelmina may be in response to his birthday. He says, Dear sister, in order not to leave your letter unanswered, I will write at once after receiving your letter and mother's and the good wishes of you both. So that was obviously a letter from his sister and his mother wishing him happy birthday. I want to tell you that I should be happy to write to you more often if it were not that a pretty considerable number of things contribute to my not being a master of my own time. And you should not imagine that I'm doing exactly what I like. So can you see how he is quite defensive here? You should not imagine that I'm doing exactly what I like. Don't think that I'm going to brothels. Don't think I'm getting drunk. Don't think I'm having fun. Oh, excuse me. Don't think that I'm doing exactly what I like. What is he doing? He says, excuse me, well, I've got a bit of a hiccup. He says, and not doing what I should prefer to leave undone. Work has got me in its grip now. Stephanie, thanks for joining us. Stephanie, I did put up the GoFundMe link to Niece's sister. I'll put it up again if you want to just remind those in chat at the end of this. Anyway, let's go back to, so it was actually Stephanie who brought my attention to this. Thanks, Stephanie. So that's quite a big statement he's making. Work has got me in its grip. I'm almost like I have no choice. I have to paint. I'm a man on a mission. He says, and I think forever, and though this is not something to be unhappy about, yet the mental picture I have of happiness is different. So that's actually quite a statement. He says, work has got me in its grip now, and I think forever. And I think that is, if anything, a true statement made by Van Gogh. I actually think I'm going to make this the title of this video. Done. Okay. Stephanie says, I love this group. But Stephanie, you've only just arrived. Where have you been? Anyway, so he says, in the first place, it pleased me enormously that Theo and Mr. Tierstig have entered into business relations. Let's have a quick look at still life with French novels and a rose. But I don't want to look at this image because it looks terrible just from there. Let's see if we can get the original or just a better version of it. These don't look terribly good, but certainly this looks better than that. So this is what he was painting. You see how red and sort of brown that is. Not quite sure what's going on with this black flower. Not quite sure what that's about. But I mean, that gives you an idea just what a bookworm Van Gogh is. He's not just an artist. He's not just a letter writer. He's got quite a library going on there. And it also kind of gives you a sense of just how lonely he is. He's reading so many books because he doesn't really have anyone to talk to. He doesn't really have any company, right? And that's also why he becomes such a great artist, is because he's got nothing else to distract him from that, or very little else to distract him from that, and very few human distractions from that whole process. Okay. Then he says, I don't regret coming here, for I think the scenery here extremely beautiful. Should we have another look at that scene from the cathedral? Someone said that they really liked that picture. It's pretty beautiful, right? These are pretty high mountains. I can tell you, I cycled over them. They are not. It's pretty potent. Definitely is pretty potent. Okay. I shall have to produce an enormous number of things against next year when the World's Fair will be held. So there's a rare reference to something that's happening in the world. Excuse the pun, but I mean something that is like big time on the radar of everybody. And so here he mentions it in a letter. And that is why they're constructing the Eiffel Tower. Did you guys know that the Eiffel Tower wasn't constructed like let's create a landmark for Paris. Okay, yeah, let's put this tower here. The idea of the Eiffel Tower was really just to celebrate the World Fair, I think in 1888, somewhere, yeah, that year, 1888. And then the idea was to dismantle the Eiffel Tower and dismantle the whole World Fair and then go on to the next thing. But the Eiffel Tower was such a initially such a controversial thing, but later on it caught on in the public imagination, and obviously all this time later people love the Eiffel Tower, right? Deborah says it's amazing depth of the moon. Okay, so he's thinking now, wow, you know what, if there's ever a chance that I'm going to sell my work, it's at the World Fair, right? So I'm going to try and this is my shot as an artist. I'm going to try and produce shit, and I'm going to have it ready for the World Fair, and the world the world is going to pass through there, and some idiot is going to buy my art. You know, this is my shot. That's my plan, right? That's his strategy. Do you think it worked? He says, seeing that my friends will not fail to have many interesting things on hand by then, not that I myself or any of the painters I hold regular or special, when he says intercourse, he means just interactions, are going to exhibit along with the others, but it is to be expected that there will be a free exhibition besides the official one. Now, for instance, I'm working on 6 pictures of fruit trees in bloom, and what I brought home today would probably please you. Now, what I want to do right now is I want to give you guys a reality check, right? All of these letters we've been dealing with, Vincent is talking quite a big game. He's talking about setting up these kind of almost international relationships between his brother, who's an art dealer in France, and Tierstig, who's in the Netherlands, and setting up these networks with other artists and so on. He's talking quite a big game. He's also thinking about producing a body of work and then being in Paris for the World's Fair, and trying to sell his work. And so guess what happens? So in other words, there's going to be this big event in 1889, right? And Van Gogh is already starting to prepare for it in March 1888, right? We just get the exact date of the World Fair. It was from the 5th of May to the 31st of October, so it was going on for quite a while. Let me just spend a moment, an additional moment on the World Fair. Let's just have a look at some of these images. And so this is a poster, I guess, advertising the World Fair. Can you see how the centerpiece of this poster is the Eiffel Tower? The Eiffel Tower was really meant to advertise the World Fair. That was really its only goal, and then they were going to dismantle it. That was really the point. Let's have a look at a couple of other. There's just a bit of a layout of the World Fair, and there's the main entrance, and that's what it looked and felt like. There's the Eiffel Tower in the background. Can you see that? So this gives you an idea of what it felt like to be around in 1889. Those are the kind of stamps that Van Gogh would be putting on his letters, and that's the kind of thing that you would see. You would see horses on carriages. You wouldn't see any cars. You'd see trams and that sort of thing. I'm going to have to get some more water, guys. I'll see you guys in a second. I don't have any lemon, alas, although I do have a lemon tree nearby. Can you see the little carriage over there? Look at the dress code as well. I think I'll need to do that. Exposition seen from a balloon. So this is what Paris looked like in 1889. Not too many skyscrapers. Not too many skyscrapers, but yeah, looks like this is quite a high resolution image. Pretty impressive tower. This is much higher than the skyline of the day, right? So kind of a close-up. I've actually stood there. I actually once slept. I slept in a park below the Eiffel Tower, not like directly below it, but not far from it when I was in Paris. View of the exposition from the Trocadero. So again, look at the way people are dressed. This is going back in time to 1889. Can you imagine if you could just turn the color on and you were standing in the scene? Would you want to live in this age? Would you want to be there? No internet, no smartphones, not necessarily electricity everywhere, but yeah, totally different time. That looks like is that a rhinoceros? Can't quite tell what that is. And that's the dress code. Hats, umbrellas, quite narrow waists, right? So can you see there is photography from this period, 1880s. In fact, photography was, doing its thing from about 1850. And so artists had to deal with that. But as you can see, it's black and white. Just another sense of what people dressed like. Walking sticks, top hats, pretty formal. Didn't see any kids in this. And you would tend to have horses pulling things. There will probably be a lot softer sounds than we know today, with cars zooming by, and instead you'd hear the clop of horse hooves and wagon wheels scrunching by. That's, I think, a false color image. So all of this is happening. This was happening when Van Gogh was writing these letters. This tower was being erected. And so that is why when he refers to the World's Fair, it's being prepared at this time. And the point that I'm trying to make by focusing a little bit on the World Fair is to say he's got quite high hopes and expectations, and then guess what happens? Just before the World Fair, he loses his ear he commits himself. He signs up to an asylum, so he completely misses the World Fair. He's while the whole world, or while there's this huge party going on for months in Paris, he's holed up in an asylum by himself, surrounded by mad people. If that's not a devastating disappointment, if that's not something you want to commit suicide in the middle of that catastrophe, then I don't know what is. But yet he passes through that horrible sense of wasted opportunity, and he comes out the other side, and he somehow picks himself up, and then he goes to Auvers-sur-Oise. Do you get a sense of the tremendous resilience in a way that he's got to come up with in order to deal with what had to have been huge disappointment? This was a incredible opportunity that he was presented with, and also just besides that, I'm sure a lot of people would have just wanted to be at the World Fair because there were all of these amazing things taking place there. There's this one cowboy act that was there as well. I think Buffalo Bill was there doing kind of a circus act, right? And all sorts of other things. And so to be holed up almost like, I mean, that's the other thing, is he signed himself into an asylum. He wasn't committed. He volunteered to do that. And so it's almost like offering to go to jail and then volunteering to miss out on this entire experience. That's what he ends up missing out on. So it is a profound thing, and one's got to juxtapose that context with what with sort of what happens. You've got to look at his life and his experience, walking in his shoes on his terms within the greater context to really appreciate what is going on here. Do you guys appreciate the level of gravity that I'm trying to communicate? Anyway, so that's not got to do with a lack of confidence. He's just lost his ear, and he was actually thrown out of Arles. And so you kind of got to ask yourself, what the hell happened between March and December 1888? Because he seemed on top of his game at this point. What the hell happened? And what do you think did happen? What do you think happened? So we're going into spring, then summer, then out of summer. What do you think is going to be taking place? Well, these letters are going to tell us. So he says he's working on fruit trees in bloom. He says, what I brought home today would probably please you. It is a dug-up square of earth in an orchard with a fence of rushes and 2 peach trees in full bloom, pink against a scintillating blue sky with white clouds and in the sunshine. Oh, so this is the artwork that is for Mauve's wife. Okay, well, it's the other version of that. That's not this one. That was for Mauve's wife. Of course, I know very well that I could have found a similar subject elsewhere, but if I take into consideration that many painters will paint the same thing, I do not think it a matter of indifference to work in the midst of a scenery which, although in general similar to ours, is undoubtedly richer and more colorful as subject matter and motif. And then people here are picturesque too. He says, whereas in our country a beggar looks more like a spectre, he becomes a caricature here. Because, as you will observe when you read Zola and Guy de Maupassant, what they absolutely insist on is a great richness and a great gaiety in art. even though the same Zola and Guy de Maupassant have said perhaps the most poignantly tragic things that have ever been said, this same tendency is beginning to be the rule in the art of painting too. So I can imagine, for instance, that a present-day painter should do something like what one finds described in Pierre Loti's book, Le Mariage de Loti, in which a picture of nature in Otaheite is drawn, a book which I warmly recommend to you to read. So again, Vincent, the bookworm is coming forward here, and is yet another book that he seems to have read. Should we find out a little bit more about what's in this book? So you can see that he's reading, he's got a lot of time on his hands. And let's try and find out a little bit about this book. So it's means the marriage of Loti. So, oh, okay. So it's someone who's from Tahiti, and it's by the French author Pierre Loti. It was Loti's second novel and the first to win him great fame. It describes Loti's romantic liaison with an exotic Tahitian girl named Rararu. It is the basis of two operas. And so this is what he's reading. He's reading about someone having a relationship with someone exotic. And guess where Paul Gogh ended up going? Tahiti. So obviously, Paul Gogh was a big fan of this particular book. In fact, probably took it to heart. Who knows, maybe Vincent recommended he read it. So anyway, he says, as a young boy, this is the background, he was introduced to Polynesia by his older brother, a naval officer who brought home stories of the exotic islands. Now, remember, we just dealt with Magellan. Well, this is the other side to the business of the whole spice trade. Well, they're women on these islands, right? And he talks about stories about a relationship he had with a Tahitian woman. Julian would never forget these stories and aimed to one day follow his brother's example. He eventually joined the Navy and at the age of 22 was stationed at the town of Papeete in Tahiti for 2 months. It was, as he put it, the dream of my childhood. It was in Tahiti that the transformation of Julian Viud into Pierre Loti began, a transformation that would come to characterize Loti's future work and life. He went native, living among the local people, learning the language, wearing their dress, adopting their customs, loving their women, even adopting the new pseudonym of Loti given to him by the local natives. So in other words, he went native. He kind of, in a civilizational sense, he, I suppose you could say, regressed, or he simply just went back to his primitive roots, kind of thing. It says that cavorting with natives while on active duty might appear unusual, but French military custom did not generally prevent its officers from socializing with other classes, unlike the English military. So it was easy for Loti to divide his attentions and duties between the Navy and the Tahitians. Further, the admiral of the fleet had a personal interest in the history and anthropology of Tahiti and encouraged Loti to learn more. Are you guys finding this quite interesting, or do you want me to get back to the letters? Deborah says, my hubby is a very fast, avid reader. Okay, so The Marriage of Loti can be seen as a non-fiction account of Loti's true life experiences and a literary work. It's to some extent autobiographical. Most of the main characters were real people. However, Rarahu herself was not. Loti admitted in a letter dated 1879, that's 80 what nine years before Vincent read this, that she was a composite of many women he had liaisons with during his 2 months in Tahiti. Well, 2 months in Tahiti and many liaisons. Loti himself goes by the name of Harry Grant in the novel, an English naval officer to hide his real identity. The plot correctly follows known facts about Loti's life and generally corresponds with his diaries. Many of the details, such as dialogue and specific events, were embellished for dramatic effect. So that same thing is in a way expressionistic, and that is what Van Gogh tries to do in his art as well, is provide intensity to something that is real to begin with. The Marriage of Lodi was first published in 1880. Van Gogh read it in 1888, 8 years later, under the title Rararu. I don't know if I'm saying it right, and later editions under the new title. It was received with wide acclaim from both critics and the public. Le Figaro, that's a French newspaper, described it as one of the most charming works to have appeared for a long time. And Les Temps found it charming, new without extravagance, original without affection. I think that they mean affectation. The public found its exotic and lyric prose a sharp and welcome contrast with the in vogue French realist school that included such authors as Émile Zola. So this is a departure from the realism of Zola. It's kind of something that is exotic and full of life, and not as dreary. It's not about the heroism inside a coal mine. It's about the joy of living on a tropical island, right? Timmy, I want to put you down. Huh? Huh? What you doing? Okay. I don't think I'm going to go much beyond the 2-hour mark. I would have liked to have gotten further into April, but my voice isn't really handling it, and yeah, I'm starting to feel a little tired. It's just gone past midnight. You will understand that nature in the South. Hold on. So anyway, so he warmly recommends Thea reads this book. And so this is what is shaping the culture of France at the time, books like this. This idea of going, getting out of the industrial sootiness, and, while the Eiffel Tower is being constructed, there are thoughts of, I want to run away to an island and dress in straws and sleep with the island girls, right? That's kind of the vibe that's going on, right? Then he says, you will understand that nature in the South cannot be painted with a palette of mauve. For instance, who belongs to the North and who is and will remain a master of the gray. So can you see that he had to push that aside? He had been taught to be a master of gray, and now he's had to realize, you know what, I'm not going to be a master of gray anymore. The other colors as well: green, yellow, red, orange, blue, yellow. It says, but at present the palette is distinctly colorful: sky blue, orange, pink, vermilion, bright yellow, bright green, bright wine red, violet. Look at those words: bright, bright, bright. But by intensifying all the colors, one arrives once again at quietude and harmony. So he's saying, if I take all of these colors and I intensify them, you can nevertheless achieve, almost counterintuitively. It's not just you highlight one color, you intensify all of them simultaneously, you can actually arrive at something that is, in a way, soothing, almost like ASMR, that all of that color is triggering, but in a way that actually soothes you. It stimulates you, but soothes you at the same time. Isn't that what he's doing with this? There's something soothing in the passion of this painting. There's something soothing about the dance of color. And this is not one of his most colorful paintings by any means. But that's what he's trying to achieve. There occurs in nature something similar to what happens in Wagner's music, which, though played by a big orchestra, is nonetheless intimate. Only when making a choice, one prefers sunny and colorful effects. And there's nothing that prevents me from thinking that in the future, many painters will go and work in tropical countries. So can you see, he reads this book about this guy having lots of girlfriends in Tahiti, and he's already daydreaming about that himself. You will be able to get an idea of the revolution of painting when you think, for instance, of the brightly colored Japanese pictures that one sees everywhere, landscapes and figures. Theo and I have hundreds of Japanese pictures in our own possession. You see, I wrote only about my work, and I have to stop now, and I don't know if I shall be able to write anything more. Best wishes to you and Mother, and thanks for your letters, Vincent. It's quite incredible that he tells his sister about this author. You can only imagine what she thinks he's filling his mind with. Anyway, he says, it's my duty to congratulate you on your birthday, as I should very much like to give you something of my work that will please you. I've set aside a little study of a book for you, and then also on a somewhat larger scale, a flower with a lot of books with pink, green, and bright red bindings. They were my set of 7 Parisian novels, the same subject. Theo will take them along for you. I have a study for jet mauve too. So it seems that this, where's that picture? Anyway, that picture with all the books is actually meant as a birthday gift for his sister. Okay, so that's the 30th of March, letter to Wilhelmina, and I think we're going to end there. We will continue with April a little later. Anyway, it talks about being in a fever of work. So do you remember I started this off by showing you those videos of Arles, and then I asked you guys about Monet, and I said, what do you think inspired Monet? And the answer was smoke. Smoke inspired him. And so what do you think inspired Vincent van Gogh? So I'm going to play some of those videos again and let me know what you guys think. See if I can find them. Start with this one. Can you guys hear the sound? Can you hear the wind? Look at the flags. Okay. So what do you think inspired Van Gogh? If it was smoke to Monet, what do you think inspired Van Gogh? Deborah says the outdoors, nature, and color. Sharon, that's a good try. We know that even before he arrived in Arles, Timmy can sometimes be irritating. Sometimes a bit of a needy dog, but anyway. We know that Vincent was already inspired by color before he arrived in Arles, right? And then that journey just continued. But the thing that the thing that changes when he comes to Arles, and what you start to see in his art is you start to see those energy lines. And if you think about Starry Night, what Starry Night seems to be conveying is movement, right? What a lot of his pictures seem to be conveying is not just here is a picture of a field, but here's a picture of a field moving, right? When he painted wheat field with crows, it's a wheat field, but it's actually birds above that. Do you think he's trying to say that this is all static? Do you think when he painted Starry Night that he's just trying to say, well, the stars aren't twinkling, they're simply doing that? When he paints a throbbing sun, is the sun simply static in the air, or is it sort of pulsating? And so that is the thing that he experiences in a visceral way in Arles. He arrives in Arles and he feels the wind. He feels his canvas literally vibrating against the wind while he's painting. He feels the loneliness of the wind when it blows at night. He feels the energy of the wind, which you see in these videos I've showed you. When the wind blows over the water, when the wind blows through the leaves, when the wind blows through the grasses, and it causes them to vibrate, it causes the light to vibrate. There's a sense of the vibrating energy of life. And it's only because the wind does that that he begins to recognize that. So let me play it one more time. See if you follow what I'm referring to. Do you see that the wind gives a atmosphere of energy, of life, of not just the landscape that you see before you, but it's a sparkling landscape. Everything is sparkling. The water is sparkling, the leaves are sparkling, the grass is sparkling, the fields are scintillating. The sky is alive, right? In other words, he's getting a sense of an electrified landscape, but through the wind moving over it. Do you see that? The wind causes the light to do that. And because the wind makes the light do that, he sees that electricity in the landscape. He's not necessarily just a visionary who looks at the landscape like Neo from the Matrix. He's seeing what's in front of him and really appreciating the life in front of him, the sparkling life in front of him. And so if you want to compete with a black and white photo, isn't this the way to do it? Show this, the innovated trees. That's the wrong word. Just show the level of energy and the sort of pulsating energy in his surroundings. And so the answer to this is wind. The wind is inspiring him. So before all, there is color, for example, in Paris. There is a shift in it, but it's in all that the wind talks to him, and the wind gets him to start adopting those energy lines. And so before all, you don't really see those energy lines. After all, in all and after all, You see those energy lines, and that is distinctively Van Gogh. He finds out who he is in all, and part of that process is through the wind. Isn't that quite fascinating? Yeah, the vibration, that's the word. He heard the wind and he felt it. Well said. And so that is why it's so important to being able to show you some video from there as well. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find the video that I took inside the Abbey. I may have put it on Instagram. I don't know. But yeah, I'll see what I can. I do have some more additional photos from Arles. So we'll come back to this in episode 43 as we go into summer, his third last summer on Earth. And it's just important to remember the backdrop to all of this. The World Fair, him trying to set up a big, ambitious artistic studio, and then what happens? He's got this big fairy tale in his mind, and then what happens? He's also thinking about going to Tahiti and having some kind of tropical experience there. And Gogh does go and live that adventure, whereas Van Gogh tragically misses out, on all of it. So think about that. Gogh is also wanting to escape poverty and suffering and sickness and misery, and he manages to do that. Vincent, in a way, is having a much harder life, and he fails to do that. And yet, look at who he is today. Look at how he is loved, admired, and respected today compared to Gogh. Just quite interesting. Robbie says Van Gogh was very intelligent. Mel says, I mentioned the wind above. Okay. So please bear in mind Nisi's GoFundMe. I'm sure if you want to contact Stephanie on Instagram or some other way, she can maybe tell you more about that. But I'm just going to put the GoFundMe link in again. Again, our hearts are with you, Nisi, and with your sister. Let us know how things are developing, but just know that our thoughts are with you. And then Terry, a little bit of a different subject. We just want to wish Terry again a happy birthday. Terry, please remember to send us some pictures of where you are, where you were today, and we hope that you've had a happy birthday. Yeah, Deborah says, see how the water captures the starlight in Starry Night of the Rhone. I'm sure I've actually got it here. There it is. There's Starry Night of the Rhone. You can also imagine if the wind's blowing over the river, then it creates this vivid portrait of the lights above it, right? You also have that. This is the precursor to Starry Night. This is Starry Night over the Rhone, and it's a precursor to Starry Night. He literally painted it about a year before. Shall I make it a bit bigger? Okay. Anyway, so on that note, Galsey says he had a few, maybe. Happy birthday. Cool. Terry says thanks a lot. So Terry, I hope you can send us some photos. I'm sure they're going to be quite awesome. I want to thank you guys for being with me. I'm a little not sure. I seem to be a little bit run down. I hope I'm not catching cold or something. I definitely didn't sleep that well last night, so maybe I need to get an early night tonight. But thanks for being here. I'll try to be back in a couple of days, maybe over the weekend, with episode 43 in the Van Gogh Letters series. Thanks a lot for joining me here. Just remember, like with this thing uh, with Monet being inspired by the smoke, that it is possible to turn a negative into a positive, and that's kind of what this channel's about, is to flourish, to produce fruit, just like Van Gogh did. Even though you are in difficult circumstances, you might be lonely, you might be struggling, you might not be completely healthy, but you somehow see the world in a way that is nourishing, even though you are struggling, even though there's adversity. And so I want to challenge you, if you were saying, I think Monet was inspired by um, whatever, water or flowers. I want you to try and think beyond the waters and flowers of your life. I want you to go into, this is kind of your homework, to go into your life and try to look at things that you've looked at every single day and thought about the same thing in a similar way, in a different way, and try to see the smoke in a way that inspires you. Try to see the wind, something that may annoy most people, in a way that um, energizes you, right? Try to see something that is not necessarily negative, but may be perceived by a lot of people as negative, and try to see that in a way that is positive or inspiring. And so think about that. And when we come back for episode 43, I want you to tell me something like that you thought about, something like that where you thought, you know what, there was something I transformed my thinking. And so if that does happen to you, please write it down in a notebook. Don't rush it. Don't expect to come up with the answer tonight or tomorrow. It might creep up on you, and it might not creep up on you at all. But I want you to try and be open to the possibility of surprising inspiration, right? And if it doesn't happen between now and episode 43, maybe it'll happen later. Um, I can tell you that my story had to do with the peach tree, where I planted two peach trees, and the one was in the shade. And I was really worried that it, because it was week after week in the shade, in in spring, and I was worried if enough time went by and it didn't get past a wall, that it wouldn't really know that the sun was just on the other side. And so I was like just hoping, are you going to grow in the shade? Are you going to have faith that the universe is got some sunlight waiting for you? And I thought that is incredible allegory for us in our lives. And so this idea of being in the shade but having faith that there is a place waiting for you in the sun. And guess what? Right now, that peach tree is taller than the peach tree next to it. It did work harder to get to the same place, just being in the sun, than the peach tree right next to it. And right now, that peach tree is taller than the one next to it, even though it's the odds were, or its struggle was harder than the tree right next to it. I don't know whether there being a little bit more shade there means that in the height of summer, the ground wouldn't dry out as much underneath. I don't know if that's a factor, but it just shows you that something that you think is against you isn't necessarily against you, and that things change, right? Things definitely change. So your mind can be a prison. And so this is a challenge, as Terry says, to think about things that are not necessarily positive or negative, and think about those things in a way that they can inspire you. So another example I can give you is I was, we've been having a lot of power failures here, a lot of the electricity going off. In fact, there was a scheduled outage for the last 2 hours. I don't actually know if it went out because I'm on solar, but I turned that into a positive. I put solar in my home. But the other side of it was when I didn't, I would, every time the power went out, I would drop everything and I would go for a mountain bike ride, or I'd go to the gym. So I would use that thing that you might say is unwelcome as an opportunity to do something positive. And I want to encourage you guys to do the same thing. Something that you see as a negative thing, try to see it in a different way. And I'm not trying to get you to magical think your way out of something, or to positive think your way out of something. I'm saying take something that is in itself, there is a positive aspect to it. In other words, you need to believe in yourself like that tree did, or you need to take control over the thing that you've got control over, which is yourself, not blame someone else or kick against the wall of your situation. Take the situation you're in and find a way that you can what's the word? Exert influence in a way that's practical and realistic and maybe positive and maybe inspiring. And so that's just what I want to encourage you to do, is to find something where you were previously. So a really good way to do this is think about something that often bothers you, something that often brings you down, and find a way to think about that in a way that is different, where you are inspired by that. And artists are quite good at transforming personal pain and personal, personal problems, personal difficulties into art, into something that speaks to others. And so you almost sort of wonder, do you need there to be pain in order for there to be this beauty? And so is the pain then that bad if you're able to do that, if you're able to produce art at the end of it? If you're experiencing pain, maybe you can turn it into art in the way that you are an artist, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so a couple of ideas there. We can be our own worst enemies. True. Okay, guys, thanks a lot for being here. Sorry about my voice. I'll be back with episode 43 and some additional images from Arles. I think you'll agree with me. It is quite atmospheric and actually quite stunning. And what's so nice is that there's sort of history in the air. And the reality is that there's history in the air wherever we are. There might be ancients or primitives who lived in a certain place, and there might be Romans or I don't know, some historical figures who lived in a place. But wherever we are, there's history. There are lives, animal and human, that were lived before us. And we are simply visitors into the world, passing through. Robbie Robbins says, looking forward to the next one. Have a great birthday, Terry. Again, our thoughts are with Nisi. Guys, take care, keep things peachy, and I'll see you guys next time.